Hi, this is Wayne Zell, and welcome to Blueprint for Wealth, your fast-paced video cast designed to help you realize your personal dreams of wealth and freedom, featuring special guests and educational topics that hopefully are of interest to you as an entrepreneur. Today, I have a special guest. He's a friend of mine. He's a co-author. He's helped me with my book. He's written a couple of books himself, and his name is Scott Montgomery. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you. Hi, Wayne. How are you? Appreciate it. Good to see you.
It's good to have you on, and we've got some really good stuff to talk about. First of all, Scott recently released and wrote a book that's gotten, Wall Street Journal, USA Today, Amazon bestseller status. It's called How Did You Get Here? But before we get to that, I want to know a little bit more about Scott's background, because he's an entrepreneur. He's running a company with his wife, and they do government contracting. And I'd like to know how you got there. Where did you come from? Where did you grow up? What were some of the challenges early on, and how did you overcome them? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, that's got 54 years in the making, but I'll try and condense it a little bit for you, Wayne. So, all right. But I appreciate that. I was born in Daytona Beach, Florida. My forming years were outside of Philadelphia in Westchester, Pennsylvania. I wasn't much of a stellar student. I was more of an experiential learner, which made classroom education a little difficult for me. So, I was known in school as, class clown, class loudmouth, center of attention kind of guy. That didn't really position me well for college. So I didn't actually attend college successfully. I threw a couple classes at myself post high school, but I got really lucky when I got my first job at Bell Atlantic. I was mentored really well. I was taken under the wings of leadership, and I was provided opportunities that I was really able to maximize in my career. And that was we've moved quickly into my 30s, and I think late 20s. It was there that I started to realize that I wanted more of an entrepreneurial experience in my career. So, kind of mapping that back to high school and my forming years, I really wanted to be more in the driver's seat than I wanted to be managed. So I went into real estate, and I really enjoyed real estate. I was invited to buy into a local real estate chapter here at Keller Williams in Great Falls here in Virginia. I just recently sold that. So I sold real estate. But then those folks at Bell Atlantic came calling a couple years later and said, "Hey, we'd really like you to consult with us." And there's where WorldGate was formed. And so I ended up being a consultant and a realtor, and was more attracted to the consulting opportunities the last 10 years. And therefore, WorldGate was able to grow. We have about 100 employees now. My wife has joined the firm as the president and CEO along with me. So we're co-founders and co-owners. Gives us an opportunity to raise our children because we can tag team those activities and grow the business together. We ended up finding ourselves in government contracting because these folks that were calling us were in public school systems, and we were attracted to that work and how that can help the next generation of students.
What kind of work do you do at WorldGate?
So the irony of me not being a good student and me now supporting school districts implementing their business systems is sort of a full circle moment for us because we support school districts up and down the East Coast. We're primarily K-12 focused. We have some of the largest top 10 school districts as customers, and we really partner with our clients. So I've been able to take that mentoring I got in my early business and sort of apply that to how I relate with my customers as a consultant firm. And then I was also able to go back and see the value of education, not having gotten mine for many years, how I can support the next generation through those systems. So it's been a really nice sort of ride for me in that regard, and very serendipitous in the waves that I've been riding. So yeah, and that brings you to today. So,
So you've written a book. Originally, you wrote a book that you co-authored called Success Mindsets.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that book and how that came about.
So Success Mindsets was of interest to me because I wanted to take, so in all that I just shared with you, there were moments where I thought legacy was important. And I think it's important to share with the next generation specifically my family, the details of how I got here and what did it look like to have a low GPA and now sell systems to school districts and implement them and give back to the community. So in wanting to write a book, I started to talk to other authors, and they said the best way to get yourself recognized is to join a group of folks. And I can't think of the word that when you call this a collective authors, and write your story. So I got a chapter in a book that talked about leadership because I think it's important to talk about business and leadership. And that gave me credentials then and the experience to go out and take it from there, write my own book. And that's exactly what I did about a year later. So how did you get here? Lessons of Unconventional Success was published a year ago.
When you're hiring employees and you're advising people about hiring employees, what do you look for?
Culture is a very important aspect to me. Someone who's got a learner mindset, who's got a growth mindset, who is roll up your sleeves and get it done. I'm not always looking for expertise. I'm looking for intention. And so the resume can give me experience and tell me where people have been. But when they get into my interview, if they're on time, if they're showing me they're interested, if they're citing examples of how they want to grow and learn, my ask when I hire someone is they give me a year. So we're not looking for indentured perpetuity for having hired someone. We're looking for someone who's in growth mindset and that we can maximize those skills for our clients and the employees.
So if it's a growth mindset, but you're only looking for a year, don't you have a lot of turnover in the business?
We don't have any turnover because the growth mindset is something we foster in our culture here. And our turnover rates are typically about 10%. And just this year, awesome. We won Inc. Magazine. And we just won this year Inc. Magazine's Best Places to Work. And in 2022, we won Washington Post Best Places to Work. So our employee surveys foster what we look for. And we offer it here at WorldGate.
What is it about the culture other than trying to generate a growth mindset that keeps people there?
Collaboration, family first, recognizing where people want to grow. We do a continual feedback, not an annual feedback. So we meet with our employees. The leadership teams meet with their employees every month. We put satisfactory, not satisfactory training. We have an entire department dedicated to people being able to call in and say, hey, I need training in a specific skill set. Can you help me execute on that? Find it, get it. And we offer that kind of support for our employees.
Excellent. Excellent. Now, there's a new book or a newer book. You wrote it a couple of years ago, but it's relatively new because I wrote a book a couple of years ago, but it didn't come out for a whole year.
Right.
And it's called How Did You Get Here? How did you get here? Where does the title come from?
So the irony of that title is that most of the folks that knew me in my younger years, when they see the success that I bring to the table now, say, oh my God, how did you, as if to say all people, get here? So, it struck me.
I got it.
It's also a metaphor for the reader. How did you, I want this to be something the reader can take the examples from and apply them to their own storyline, because I'm not unique. I'm not different. I'm just surprisingly successful for having applied what I talk about in the book.
Yeah. And you never stopped learning. I know that you went back to school not too long ago and graduated from the University of Virginia. Tell us about that and what you did in that regard.
Yeah. So I think for going back to the University of Virginia, it helped that I was in COVID. Because, that experiential learner guy didn't have much he could experience from his own living room. So when I started looking around at education and started trying to figure out how I wanted to, finish that up in this opportunity, UVA aligned beautifully with how I wanted to learn, what I wanted to learn, and the culture that they bring is more of a humanities than it is an expertise in the program I was in. So when I looked at other schools, they're like, you've got to, do these credits and learn these important skill sets. Whereas at UVA, they were very much about, what's your interests and where do you want to take your interests? And I was really fortunate there. I met the dean of my school, both deans, one left midterm, and they actually invited me to teach some of the classes because of the experiences I had at WorldGate. So I felt like I was more involved than I was a student. And it inspired me to one, tout their school. I love UVA. And two, it's how you and I started talking.
Yeah,
so
no, I saw you wearing a hat in the locker room.
Exactly. Exactly.
So the idea The idea of partnerships and relationships is a continuing theme through the book. And there's a great line in the book that I want to quote. It's where your wife and you are attending a Jack Nicklaus event, and she turns to you and says, "Sometimes I worry, Scott, that I'm too much of a string to your kite." Tell me more about that, how that has affected your thinking, her thinking, and how you all have been able to stay together. Because a string on a kite, you think about a kite, it could be very beautifully flying in the sky, or it could be crashing into the trees. Tell us more about that, why you're the kite.
Well, I think it was funny because at that event, I was very inspired by the successes of the people that were surrounding me. It was not only Jack Nicklaus, but a lot of celebrities, a lot of professional sports athletes. I was in my element trying to be of that sort of learner mindset. Like, how did you get here? What are you doing? How's this is great? What are the secrets to how you found success? Mm-hmm. And I think when Kayla and I had a private moment walking from a house to the clubhouse, she was feeling like I wasn't bringing that authenticity to every conversation. So she wanted to acknowledge that. And I was like, well, first of all, I need that kite or that string rather. And second of all, no one needs to be manically excited about every conversation we have with people that are successful. So it's okay. But it was a moment, it was a defining moment for us to sort of recognize how we operate as a couple. And I think, I think it's important to recognize that people bring their strengths to a relationship. And if you can massage those and be aware of them, it can make a huge difference in how you perform together. And I think the analogy was beautifully stated. We're actually scheduled to go back to that event this August and see those same people. So I'm excited about that, and actually probably talk about the dynamic that was recognized as a result of that last dynamic with Jack Nicklaus when I get the chance. So it'll be a full circle moment again,
One of the questions that ran through my mind is, that's a really exclusive event. It's not a very big event. How did you get invited to that? I'm thinking, entrepreneurs are out there thinking, how do I get to go to one of these events?
Yeah. Pay to play. I think my father-in-law invited me, and he and his friends had donated enough to the charity that they got invited to the exclusive happy hour. So it's as simple as that.
It's, that's how you build relationships.
Right. That's right.
So back to the book. What are if you had to list the top 3 lessons from the book that it dives into to help young entrepreneurs and emerging business leaders, what would they be?
My first one that jumps out at me, and the reason part of the reason I wrote the book is legacy, right? So I wanted to share my legacy, but 2, I wanted to pay homage to some of the folks I talk about in the first 2 chapters. And that is your partner in life, my wife, and also these partners in business that have stood by me, high and low. And they've instructed sometimes, hey, take a pay cut. Hey, we're not giving you that contract. Hey, it's needs to go this way. But I think it's so important for people to recognize that it's not the skill I bring, it's the intention that I bring and the pliability. And when they ask me to do something, I do it really well. And lastly, and I think most important for college kids, the things I'm doing now, they never taught me in school, and they've just evolved through technology and time. So you have to be in that mindset of collaboration. And I think that's why I sort of put those in the very front of the chapter. Get in that mindset of collaboration, work with people. Don't try and think you bring all the intelligence.
It's funny. You list 3 of our 6 values as a firm. One is intentionality, being intentional in everything you do, making sure that you're focused and not thinking about something else. But you also said pliability. Ours is adaptability, but it's the same thing. It's being able to adapt to different situations. And I think those 2 factors, along with being a collaborative environment, teamwork, 3 factors are critical to success in business. And I'm really I'm grateful that we share those values. Why weren't you set up for success originally, and how did you get it turned around?
So my family was disjointed. I come from a divorced family. I come from parents who were more interested in fighting with each other than they were raising kids, I think. I don't want to dig my parents. They did the best they could, but I think that seeing as a parent, what I do differently now, there is an absolute gap in how I was raised, which then fostered me to look outside my home to try and find those relationships I talk about in the book. And it made me more available to being collaborative. And I think that's a really important thing for people, even my own kids who come from a very supportive, very collaborative environment, very, managed, if you will, environment. I still want them to go find their second parents out in the world, right? And the people that they can work closely with. But for me, it was a kill or be killed. It was kill or be killed for me, which added a layer of energy that was exhausting. And if that's another reason I wrote the book, be aware of it early so you don't have to fight your way through it.
It's very painful to have to go through. It creates a lot of anxiety, a lot of emotional angst, and it's really difficult to navigate. Really difficult to navigate. You've been successful in your career so far, and I expect it'll continue. How do you define success?
I define success by being able to talk with you, to be sharing stories with folks that need the information I have. I think being locked in an office and not being managed, not being locked in an office and not being managed are really nice things that I would call success. I'm a happy guy. I live within my means. My means don't have private jets, but I don't need that. I think those things drive my success. Happiness to me is the bottom line of the word.
Being satisfied with who you are and what you have.
Yeah, and that's a never ever changing. For me, it's continually to grow, but that's I'm going to be in Florida tomorrow. No one's looking over my shoulder. You know what I mean? It's going to be nice.
Yeah. Now, you went and got your leadership training at George Mason University, which is a great school, and you basically became an expert in leadership coaching. Why is leadership coaching so important? Why did you pursue that certification, and how do others partake of that?
So for me, when I opened up WorldGate and I was a consultant being courted from the real estate industry, I recognized I didn't have much leadership experience in my portfolio. So I hired a leadership coach. Serendipitously, I had sold this person's condo and they were certified at Georgetown University. And so in 2010, I hired a leadership coach, and that well-rounded relationship that allowed me to explore the different things and experiences that I was having from someone who had also had them, 3 kids, 9 law offices, Montgomery County, fast-paced Northern Virginia. I recognized that it was important. They thought, why don't you go get certified as leadership coach? You really bring those attributes. So I did. I mean, it's as simple as that. And then when I did, I realized I was bringing those skills to the company. I also realized I didn't want to be an hour-by-hour coach for people. So that was another reason for me writing the book. The attributes of what I learned at George Mason through the certification program included things like communication styles, fostering mindset, growth mindset. And so I was getting certified thinking, I'm going to write a book about this one day because it's simple stuff. Mm-hmm. And so it all kind of comes together that way.
So there's a quote in your book, or a statement in your book, that coaching is all about personal inquiry and self-discovery. What do you mean by that?
So people get coaching confused with therapy or psychology. They get confused with it by consulting. So when I hired a coach, I hired someone to let me process what the answer is and have them hold me up while I talked about it. And they offered feedback to what they were hearing when invited to. A therapist is paid to tell me what my early childhood experiences. Yeah. And exactly. And a consultant is paid to give recommendations. So there's a nuance to coaching that I really define in chapter 6 as I break down the varying competing titles of service.
So coaching does not have to be hour to hour. I know that you're developing workshops that come out of the concepts in your book, which I think is a really valuable tool. You want to have the ability to have people ask you the right questions and for you to ask the right questions. I'm curious, you've had people as mentors. Who are the mentors that you relied on in your life, and how did they impact you?
So my mentors were mostly in business and they were mostly management. I've had some very good mentors over the years that I'm still in touch with that filled the gap of my knowledge between having book smarts and a learner mindset and the skills I needed to bring. And I worked my way through the ranks. So, I mentioned them in the book: Julie Harner, Amy Delone Edie, Pat DeLella. These people were all really influential. And the irony is that two of the three of them actually worked for WorldGate up until, and actually Amy is still in charge of my training department here at WorldGate. And Pat just retired a year ago. And these people became familial, in that regard. So real quick story. I was speaking at a Fordham University at a classroom of kids, and one of them said to me, "What's the line between familial relationships and corporate relationships?" And I thought it was such a powerful question that I threw it back at them as a coach and said, "What's your line?" Because for me, I bring these people right in and I call them family, and I've known them longer than I've known, many people, 35, 40 years now. And the I call them family now. And as an 18-year-old sitting there graduating college, they're like, "What does that mean?" So just being aware that those boundaries are probably self-inflicted. I tend to not have stronger boundaries. When I connect with someone, I go right for it. And I'll stay right there with you, and I'll honor that the best I can. And typically that lasts a long time.
I know that listening is a skill that is really infused in the great leaders. People who are great leaders are great listeners. What have you done to become a great listener over your lifetime?
I don't know that I'm a great listener. So I've done a lot of work on trying to sit on my hands when people talk. But again, I struggle with that sort of interactive, let's talk to think perspective. And people can appreciate that. I think listening is a skill that will be something I work on for many years to come. But having 3 kids and having employees and being intentional, we can move through a lot of what people need from me. And listening is not always my strongest suit, but I'm working on it.
All right. Well, you're very self-deprecating, and I appreciate that. That's another good trait of a good leader.
Thanks.
Growth mindset is something you've mentioned a couple of times. Tell me a little bit more about what a growth mindset is and how somebody can evolve into having that as part of their makeup.
So that was first introduced to me by my kids' elementary school. Carol Dweck wrote the book. She's got the intel on that. Yeah. And so I recommend everyone go ahead and get that book. But what I gleaned from it and the way that I interpret that is for people to be in a place of yes and, or of we can, but we can also do it this way, versus no, that's not going to happen, and no locking in on an answer. And that's really hard for people who want to be right to get through a problem. And I think being in it or even a problem or a growth idea, being in that sort of inquiry is really what it means to me. The yes and is a really simplified way to say it. You can do it this way and you can do it that way is really the introduction to growth mindset for me. Because then you're learning and you're open to different collaborations on that versus, no, we got to do it my way or the highway.
Right. And I think it's being open-minded and listening to others' views, so that it's sort of a corollary to what you're saying. If you're open-minded and listening to others' views, and you're able to maybe change the way in which you're thinking to adapt, which is pliable, that's really important.
I'll just tell you a quick story. I was watching The Crown. It's a good show on Netflix about the monarchy. And one of the things that jumps out at me from a growth mindset perspective that Queen Elizabeth was noted for in that show was when she decided to televise the monarchy, because the people needed to see it. And that was not okay with prior monarchy or prior thinking. And the ability for her to get in front of the TV and share with the world what it looked like to be inside the Monarch was, to me, the perfect example of a growth mindset.
Well, if you watch all the way to season 6, which I have watched the whole thing all the way through, she's also adaptable in the sense that she allows for her son to get divorced and then get remarried and still be in line for the throne. She was adaptable. I don't know if she was really a growth mindset.
I know it's a tough one. It's a tough one.
It's a tough one, but that's a good analogy. I like that. Yeah. So how do readers unpack all these lessons and adapt them and use them for their, daily approach to becoming the best entrepreneur, the best business person, the best father, the best partner?
I love that you asked that question, Wayne. And it really is where I start to get excited about the book. I don't love so much talking about me on this book for some reason. I've noted that, I've been on NBC, I've been on CBS, I've been around the country talking about this book, and I'm realizing I don't really love to be in front of the camera. But one of the things I really like about this book is how it can be interpreted. So one of the things I did was hired a seasoned professional coach alongside of myself being one. And we went through each chapter and said, how do we want to make this about the reader? How can people take what's being shared with them in this legacy story and apply it to what their legacy story is? So at the end of each chapter, I ask 5 questions. And they're very much related to how do you interpret the stories you just read in the vein of the topic, not how Scott did it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I was just going to go there. You and I guess think alike, but I was just going to go there. At the end of each chapter of the book are 5 excellent questions. Like, here's a good one: where does your mind feel most at ease, Scott? That's one of your questions.
Right. And so you're talking about mindset, and you're talking about the skill. I forget the chapter title, but it's, I should know it, right? It's my own book. Self-care.
It's mindset and self-care. Yeah.
Yeah. It's important that you take that chapter and recognize that there's cortisol coming through your body all day, especially if you live in Northern Virginia and just drive from your home to the office. You know what I mean? And so that question is a great one for when you're trying to understand self-care and mindset. And again, I hired a leadership coach to help me with those questions. Her name's Ellen Fulton. She's prominent in the industry, and she's actually who certified me. And I wanted her input on that. And that question now introduces to the reader, you've heard what Scott does, but what do you do? What is it you agree with? And that's why I asked that question. And so there's nothing for me yet. I'm still working on how I can put my mind at ease.
Well, I'm going to ask you one more question from the book, and then we can go on. What is the greatest lesson that you've taken away from all these stories, really?
I don't know that I've gotten a lesson yet, and I'll think about that as I describe what comes up for me when you ask that question. And what comes up for me is the interest people have in the topics that I have talked about. I am floored by the fact that in my own attempts at a podcast, and we've got a couple episodes, and I'm going to revamp that and look at that in the fall again. But every interview I've ever done, it comes down to relationships, self-care, communication, habits, all the things that I'm talking about, leadership, coaches, and all the things that we talk about, setting your goals and setting yourself up for success. It's fascinating to me how simple it can be and how everyone is interested in it. It's fascinating. And everyone in the world
everyone
that I'm
is interested in it.
Yeah.
I mean, there are books that are written on each of these chapters, and that's why, it's a quick read, and I highly recommend it, by the way. If anyone wants to get a copy of the book, Scott, how do they go about doing that?
So I've got a Simon & Schuster published book, so you can pretty much get it and order it from any bookstore. It's not on the shelves of everywhere, but we've got it on the shelves in a couple beach stores. We've got it at Barnes & Nobles in a couple locations. And Amazon is probably your best location. I've got the audiobook out. It's also going to be on Amazon. And, it's easy to find.
Did you narrate it? Did you narrate it yourself?
I did. I did, and I actually did 2 rounds. The first round sounded so janky that I did the second one, and I just wrapped it up last week. So we're overriding the first one with the new one this month. So wait a couple weeks and
doing that.
I didn't have any fun doing that, but okay. I thought it was awful.
I mean, well, look, your book is what, 150 pages, 149,
you did it.
Whatever. I did a 365 page book with math examples and stuff like that. So
God bless you.
Took me 2 solid weeks to do it, but this is not about me; it's about you. And so, if people want to get the book, they can go to Amazon. The name of the book is "How Did You Get Here? Lessons of Unconventional Success" by Scott Montgomery. It's a bestseller all around the country, and I highly recommend it. And Scott, again, you've taught us some great lessons today, and I wish you the best. And thank you for being a special guest on Blueprint for Wealth.
Wayne, I can't appreciate it enough. Thank you, too. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to spreading the word.
Awesome. And next time, join us for another special guest on Blueprint for Wealth. Have a great day.